Hi, colleagues. Tim Faith here, and I was recording this as a short demonstration of a reflective teaching practice and how you can integrate that with generative AI. And what I'm showing you is a section of my website, proffaith.com, that has a collection of recordings that can be processed in various ways. And one of the ways that you can use those is to self-evaluate your teaching. So the idea of reflective teaching practice is, to use feedback from various sources to reflect, including from yourself, and reflect on your teaching and consider how are you teaching students? What is their response to your teaching? Are there other teaching techniques that you could consider, that might advance student learning? And to get that feedback, normally, for a normal a semester, you might get observed periodically in your classes by a supervisor, department chair. And for college level teaching, often there's an anonymous survey that's done after the end of the semester. And so that feedback, while useful, isn't necessarily impactful in the current semester where you're working. So this is a way to kind of to use information that's available to you to be able to do more frequent self-evaluation. Did that lecture, did that class meeting go as I had hoped it would? Now, this particular set of transcription jobs I've already uploaded are for an asynchronous class. And so part of the instruction are asynchronous lectures. I have 11 of them altogether that I put together for education law. And this class usually runs on a compressed schedule. So in the first unit, they've already heard three of these lectures on free speech issues and kind of where the education law, the sources of law are. So I have them, and I could run the self-eval for one of them. So let me. And the other thing that I'm doing as a part of my teaching practice is every module has an anonymous survey, and it's an exit ticket. And what I'm showing you here in my Brightspace course is the recent exit tickets. So we're working through, we just finished up Unit 1. And so if I was to, this class started actually June 2nd. So if I was to go and look at all of the survey results from June 2nd forward, these are the first three modules, which my lecture is only about one of the three. But nonetheless, I mean, I think the feedback here can be helpful. Now, my exit ticket also asks about particular teaching practices that I'm trying to use in the class and how does it help students with their learning. As you can see, not everybody thinks the textbook's helpful. Not everybody likes the lecture. Some think that it didn't help them. In other cases, there's sort of a strong consensus that some of the homework activities are helpful or very helpful. The review questions for the lecture are interesting. If the lecture didn't like it, but perhaps the review questions were more helpful for people. And, it gives me a sense, if 50 out of 58 are generally feeling like things are working for them, then that's a thing for me to reflect on. If I have maybe a strong feeling about a particular activity, then it might be a chance for me to change course at this point. We have several weeks of this class left. I could say, all right, well, I'm not going to do this activity, but let me try something else. So part of my exit ticket is helping me to maybe recalibrate directly based on, the teaching techniques that I have used in the class. But the other question I'm asking, so it's just really two questions for students, is there anything that didn't make sense? As more, or did you have a particular problem with something in the course? And again, I get a lot of feedback here, um, and I can copy this. So if I go and copy all these comments, um, Again, I can scan through these, but I can also use that feedback in my self-evaluation here and just simply paste all of that information in to my form, right? So it's an easy way to collect that. If you didn't want to, or you aren't using Brightspace, but you want to do this, there's a lot of free tools out there like SurveyMonkey that will let you do basic surveys. If you're an Office 365 installation, Forms is an app within the Office ecosystem. You can use that for surveying people, and it will let you collect the data. It actually puts it in a spreadsheet, which again you can copy and paste from a spreadsheet into, an HTML form like this. And so you can do these kind of getting feedback from students, which in and of itself is helpful. With generative AI, you could also take all the written feedback and ask AI to summarize it for you. It's very good at that. Don't need any special software. Any of the AIs will do that for you. But what I'm trying to do is to integrate that into the evaluation of this lecture. So I haven't taken the time to really reflect on the lecture, which is optional, whether I've met my goals or not. But I have student feedback that's related to that lecture. And so I'm going to go ahead and generate a self-evaluation. This one is about student speech and, again, constitutional issues here. Um, and so that will work in the background as well and will generate a more complete evaluation. Some of the things that we've added in to this feature include the idea of making suggestions based on known teaching techniques, which I've sourced from my own experience with AQ, which is the training program for faculty for improving teaching techniques. Also looked at a couple of textbooks or really, more academic books for instructors. Bowen had written a book about teaching with generative AI, and chapter 12 of that book has a fairly substantial amount of suggestions for AI-related activities that you could try with students. Also, Barkley, from a few years ago now, but Barkley also wrote a book, again, about higher ed teaching techniques and various kinds of ways of evaluating um, uh, improvement in your course, things that you could try in terms of teaching techniques that might be more engaging for students, that might confirm understanding, things like that. So a relatively long list of different ideas. Not all, of course, would be relevant to every situation, but it would give you feedback if you didn't try those things and it seemed like it might help, with student understanding, to be able to take a look at that. And let me share the evaluation here. So this one is for the First Amendment, and it gives you a couple of the learning objectives. Tells you what it got out of my lecture for the half hour of it. Um, there, uh, there was some feedback that some of the stuff isn't clear in terms of the First Amendment, which is very complicated for student speech. And there's, graphics in the textbook, and it's still very difficult to follow Hazelwood versus Tinker versus, some other authority, and when it applies and under what circumstance. Um, it suggested that so there is enthusiasm for the material. Um, they can review the lecture at their own pace. And of course, it doesn't know, but I provide a written transcript, which is of the lecture, so they could read it. And actually, some students value that as well. Um, and then it suggests here professor could incorporate more interactive elements such as polling or quizzes. facilitate small group discussions or debates, and provide additional resources or explanations for complex topics and terms. And what it doesn't know, of course, is that I've also built some homework questions. So you get the lecture and then you get some questions about the lecture. So there is a chance for students to, to practice what they got out of the lecture. But one of the things that this suggests is that maybe I need to take some time and drill into some of the complexity of student speech and some of the case law in more detail. And so that's an opportunity for me as students are working through the unit to develop perhaps another lecture, maybe focus on two or three cases, maybe, drilling down for example, and building case extracts of maybe the important cases from the reading or recent cases about student speech, and having students read those and do something with the information, do something like answer questions about it or write a summary of it, or something else that would help them further explore some of what are relatively complex topics about the rules and nuances with student speech and restrictions on student speech. So it's not far off, right? And it's integrating some of the student feedback, with the lecture itself and its own ideas about things that I could try, in terms of improvement. So again, what's good about this, and if you're thinking about a reflective teaching practice, is no one's ever going to see this, right? It's just between you and the AI, and it doesn't care, whether you're a good or bad teacher. It's not making any judgment, but it's a way to provide you with more professional level feedback, which, if you've taught for a while, that's really hard to come by. It's also really hard to get feedback from students that you can act on within the semester or even within the unit. So if you work on developing, some kind of survey tool that's built into your course design, and again, what's interesting is that AI can help you with building the tool. I mean, you don't necessarily have to, do everything manually. It could probably provide you with ideas for what you could put in the survey, and you could select from them. So if you're not sure, it can generate ideas for things like that. And the feedback can be helpful, right? It's designed to be constructive. What worked, what didn't? What are people still having problems with? What could you do about that? Again, some actionable steps that you could take, which may very well be timely, particularly if you have an exam coming up or you want to do review for an exam, for example, and you've gone through your lectures and students are still reflecting problems with certain areas of the content. Well, that's a great place to start with the review is here's things you've asked me about, and here's some more information about that. So an opportunity to really use that in improving your teaching. Again, all that functionality in terms of getting this AI generated course observation report available from proffaith.com.